Hello, welcome to the making of Allium, the robot suit I created for Patrick Ryder's short film Human, which I also ended up acting in as well. So, because I fitted the suit, I wore it and had to act as a robot, which was lots of fun, quite interesting, a little bit restrictive, but I learned quite a lot in the process of doing this. It was the first time I'd created props for anything before. As you've seen in this stuff on my channel, it's just all been little models. But a lot of those skills transferred into creating something that's more realistic. So, I hope you enjoy seeing how Allium came into being. This is what we started out with. Patrick got a suit from the prop store. It was originally from the film Ultraviolet. It's what he could afford at the time. So I think it's a low budget. It went to Kickstarter, and this is what we got for the suit that Patrick bought. Originally, this was made as what they called glass armour for the film. It is transparent. We can have a look. You can see this was transparent plastic. When we got hold of it, it was actually tinted green. There were a lot of breaks in there. If we have a little closer look, you can see those cracks and things which I had to repair before I could even start work on it. The initial idea was to paint it black and add some bits to it and lights. That was the initial idea Patrick had for this. You can see there's an arm. I've peeled off the sticker. I actually got it stuck on a lamp and a printer. Was both arms. One of the original ideas was going to have some sort of nuclear power. It was powered by nuclear power, but that was all dropped to go with that idea. So I came around to Patrick's house and had a look at this thing. It's the first time I've seen a suit like this before. And my initial idea was to have panels perhaps put onto it. Patrick wanted to have loads of strip lights on there. We had a concept art done a while ago with a load of lights all around it, but it didn't really make much sense for a robot to have a load of lights unless it was needed. And if it were actually in places that were of any use as warning lights or what have you, it wouldn't make sense to have lights everywhere. I looked at a load of robots of being made today, and most of the time they had these plastic cowlings, and you might see some lights, but went all over the place. So my idea for this was to, the excuse if you like, the idea of why this has all this armour sort of plate. And the idea that I had was that it would be covering up the internal workings to protect people from it, because it would have powerful servo motors in all the joints, and just to protect it from wear and tear. So it would be a flexible suit around the joints here, and a protective cowling that the roboticians, I think that's right, would be able to work on without having to take the whole thing apart. They can work into it and take out data cards and all that kind of thing, you see. So you'd see more of that on the back. Originally Patrick wanted a light mounted on it, and we had looked at some stuff. Right, so this is one of the lights Patrick was looking at, and you might see Patrick in the background there. Looking at lights on eBay. We ended up with getting something that was really cheap, and it didn't look as good as this. We also thought it'd be a bit too obvious of an Iron Man looking thing. So we were looking at other ideas, and you'll see some of those ideas later on. And there's Patrick there in the suit, give me an idea of what this thing looked like. So from there we went on to this. Well, I went on to this rather. So because the idea, he wanted it to be black, so I just photoshopped him out and have a go at this thing here. So what we also had was a mask which Patrick bought, which is a Raver's mask, and it's a sound activated thing, so when you spoke, made noises, the mask would light up in these concentric circles, so flash out sort of thing, depending on how the frequency of sound is being shouted at it. And we've got this thing, the eyes are actually slightly offset, so we're looking at ways of how this thing would work. Putting it on it was fine, but the wearer would have to look out through these holes. Let's have a closer look at that. We'd have to look out through here, so it's quite a difficult thing to mess around with. So that's what we started off with, and also we had, I haven't got a picture of it here, a thin balaclava as well. So working from here with this first idea, just drawing on the mask to see what it all looks like. So we started off sketching out some ideas. These are my sketches of just quick rough things of what we can do with the face here. How we can create a face on the mask but still have those lights showing around in the face there. And there's a quick sketch there which was going to be a battery, which is the another thing which I had to make, another prop we would see later on in the film. This is a slightly later sketch after we'd done these ones, and so these are some of Patrick's sketches. We're both doing it at the same time. Obviously we couldn't have these angry looking faces for the robot, looking a bit sort of Vader-ish, a bit skullish there. Here's another few sketches we had. Obviously the one in the centre was one idea which Patrick liked, and so we have a look again here and we can see two there. One, the top left there, has been ticked, and we look down at the other one there, there's another one that's been ticked. There's the few ideas which we could go along with, so we can have some sort of a face which would still keep the sort of expressive lights, if you like, of the face. So this was the first idea. I tried photoshopping out on here, so you can see I've just drawn out some slots into the face just to give Patrick an idea of what this could look like. We found that there was not enough of the light showing in the face here, so I came up with some more ideas. So in this one here I did a bit more detail before adding a new face onto it, before we figure out what we can do. So we've got some ideas for the back of the hands. We used a pair of gloves which lit up at the fingers, and I also used some cheap Poundland bikers gloves. So I played around with some ideas for the chest light. This is when we were still looking at using the sort of Iron Man style thing going on here before we actually got it in the post. We ended up with some really cheap push light, which was going to be just too big and fat and chunky, and I was looking at ways of being able to paint it up, make it less look like an Iron Man thing, but ultimately it wouldn't work. So even though I had this idea here with holes cut out, it wouldn't work behind the chest. We've got some ideas here for some holes and just to break up the surface of it, and we see the first of idea here of the logo for Allium, for the company who in the backstory called Omegon Robotics, who created the robot. I devised a logo which I'll show you in a moment, and I'll talk about that. I still have the little redesigned nuclear, what's the name, warning power thing there, which was ultimately dropped in the end. We didn't go with that idea. Okay, so looking at the mask now, we actually thought we was getting a helmet, like a paintballer's sort of helmet kind of thing, but it was actually a netting with Velcro on it, and that explained why it was quite cheap for a helmet, because it wasn't a helmet. But we used it anyway. I added some pieces of plastic across the top of it. From that I fleshed out the sketch, added more of the head and some of the neck of the suit that we had. Try and give Patrick an idea of what we were working with. I added a bit of detail around here, you might be able to see, for the robot. I collected quite a few bits, which you'll see in the next video. So from that sketch we went to this one here, and I started playing around with some ideas for the face. I decided to have more of a sort of angular look to this thing going on, which still retained a semblance of a face here. We have like this sort of nose piece, and some ideas for lights in the eyes and these cheek parts here in the face. So we still had these lights which would light up around here, and if you can see these bits of plastic here, which was actually based on a I was looking to find cheap pieces of plastic I can use, and I looked and I got some plastic folders. Actually we'll see it later on as this is being built, and an earpiece which is actually some of what's the name, old earphones which I had. So at this point I was gathering lots of bits and pieces, and also a little torch which clips on onto anything, which I clipped onto the side there and had a look at that. So starting to build this up. Here I'd collect some other pieces. There's a little aerial, which is actually an old Win TV aerial thing, and I decided to make it a bit more robotic looking by adding lots of different bits and pieces, as well as a sort of semblance of the resemblance of the logo here on the head. It's the diamond. You notice there's little scratches and dents or scrapes and things in there. The idea was that the robot was left behind abandoned in this warehouse where it was made after the whole project of it had been closed. So I thought I'd work that into this sketch as well. Another reason for these bits and pieces was to also hide the sort of felt headband which went across around the head here. Originally I was going to add solid pieces, but I found that it would make it too restrictive and hard to wear. So I thought of breaking it up, making it into segments which make it a lot easier to fit on. It didn't have to be any particular shape, just to make it a bit more interesting and to just hide the fact that it is actually just a felt covering, felt band that's around the head. So from this point and into the head-on view to see what I can add to it, and I had these ideas of adding labels and hazard signs and different things just to break up the look of it, I suppose, just from being less of just a completely black looking machine. Ultimately there wasn't enough time to do that in the end, so we just went with just a whole sort of black robot. But I did have my logos that I made, so I added them to the robot, and you'll see those in a second. So here you can see I've come up with my first idea for the logo for Allium, for Omegon Robotics, and the initial idea I had was for a chip which plugs into the heart, and a brain, being the robot's brain, being hit by lightning, which gives it life. But which actually gives it life is the chip being plugged into the heart, which is kind of the thing which makes it human. I kept this design for quite a long time, even when I got to the stage of creating a decal waterside transfer to apply to the robot. When I still had this niggling feeling in the back of my mind, it just wasn't quite right, and it was the symbol here, the shape I made for a brain. I changed it to an actual profile view of an angular looking brain, something a bit more robotic like than what we had here. If you run back to some of the numbers on these logos, some of them were film dates of robots which had films which had robots in, and birthdays of Patrick's family and my family in there. And the barcode actual dashes are just random because I didn't have anything to make it out of. Who knows? So you can also see some ideas for little extra things I could stick on the robot. These little hazard signs, and the previously seen, partially seen nuclear warning signs, which ultimately weren't used in the end. And so there's another sheet here of other labels and things that I was going to add to it. Little warning things, we can take a little closer look. Do not block air vents, make sure things are turned off. Those were the first things, the first ideas I had, because I thought there should be little warning signs and little bits of detail here and there which people working on it have to be aware of when they're making these things, all that kind of stuff. It just adds detail to it really. There's some more ideas here of what I was going to do with it. I think these ones were actually done first. So here's a printout of labels that I was going to use on the back of the robot and on a wall power unit which we were going to make. At one point Patrick had the idea of just photoshopping in some detail, but he wanted a box which had a flexible piece of conduit tubing which would plug into the back of the robot, which is another thing I had to make. But if you have a look here, these are my ideas of things that I'm going to stick on there. I didn't use any of these lift here things at all, but we did use the circular thing labels on two of the plugs on the back, which are actually used in the film, and with the props, where we'd have a battery plugged into the alternate power, and the twisted brake seal, which would have the main power cable plugged in. As I was doing this, I started working in loads of little film references. Both these circular ones were Terminator ones, and I did get the blue one wrong. It should actually be pull to break the seal, but I'm not worried about that. We've got the Dyson long life battery, as in Miles Bennett Dyson, who is supposed to be responsible for the creation of Terminators. Have a flux capacity label here from Back to the Future, not from the film but in reference to it. And the Danger high voltage ones were based on the proton pack in Ghostbusters. You'll see in photographs there are these labels here and there. The biggest was used on the big power wall unit, and the smaller one was used on the back, and just one of these ones, the red ones, was used on the wall unit again, and the yellow one on one of the pieces which goes on the back of the robot. So this was a last piece which wasn't used in the end, and I wished it was, but it's there. I've got it. I've scuffed it all up as well. We were going to use it, but I think because it was nothing to do with radiation in the end, so that's probably why it just wasn't used really. But I do like it though. Some odd bits of detail on there. So that brings us back to the beginning again of the first concept art, because there wasn't a lot of time to start getting on with it and building the thing. That's all the concept art we did. So there you have it. That's the beginnings of Allium, of how we got to the very first ideas of what we're going to do for this robot. And you'll see next an array of bits and pieces which I collected and found and bought, and then played the whole thing by ear, pretty much. I was cross-referencing everything with Patrick, sending little videos of everything I was doing, pretty much when I was making the next videos you'll see, and that's how the process went along from there. You might say this was good, a lot of times it was great, or to not bother with something, so that's how we worked. Okay guys, so that's the concept art for Allium. Goodbye!
A new line.